I'm here talking about a systematic review and meta-analysis about social network interventions for type 2 diabetes. Not internet social networks, just your social network, like your family, your parents, your grandparents. So it's a systematic review and meta-analysis. So what we do is that we get the help of a librarian from Mayo Clinic, and she does a search for us of all the electronic databases that are applicable. And we got about 1,500 abstracts to screen. From those 1,500, we went down to 100 full text that we had to read and go through. And then after that, we ended up with 15 trials. We basically looked for all of the trials that we could find for social network interventions for type 2 diabetes. So do people do better in terms of glycemic control when they have help from their peers, help from their family, help from their spouses, or versus a control? The control could be usual care or the intervention delivered to one person at a time. We found that, like other diabetes interventions, there's a improving glycemic control with social network interventions in the short term at 2 to 4 months. At later time points, that difference seemed to disappear. It's not clear what the problem was or why they weren't successful. The effect size, the pooled effect size, or the estimate that we could say was always one of improvement, but the 95% confidence interval made them not statistically significant. It's also hard to evaluate because the different interventions had a lot of different components, and it's hard to isolate what was the component that really helped people get their glucose under control. So there still needs to be more work done in terms of trying to pinpoint what it is about these interventions that works. The purpose of a systematic review and meta-analysis is twofold. One is we get the best estimate for how these interventions work, or what the effect of these interventions are, from the literature that we have up to now. And it seems that there is a positive effect, and there's some promise in the fact that social networks should be involved in people's management of diabetes. The other thing that a systematic review does is that it tells us what is the body of evidence and what are the blind spots and what is missing. What we can tell that is missing is trying to isolate what are the components of the interventions that work. There needs to be better reporting of how these interventions were thought through and were performed, so we can see which are the ones that we should invest in and which are the ones that we should scale up and make them perhaps national programs or things that that clinicians can recommend to their patients. So from observational studies, we know that people with that have more social support tend to have better glycemic control. But what we don't know is for people that don't necessarily have a lot of social support, can it be constructed from those people? And what's really interesting about social networks is that they can be both positive and negative in terms of their effect on people's glycemic control. Because sure, it can be great to have someone help you cook your meals and work out with you, but it can also threaten your self-image or your autonomy when you think, people are watching me and they think that I'm cheating on what I'm supposed to be doing. So the social support and the social network component of diabetes management is essential, and I think something that really deserves more attention. This complements the work that I'm doing in my thesis overall, which is on the work of being a patient with type 2 diabetes. How much time do people actually spend? What do they find burdensome and what don't they? And how do they draw on the people around them to help manage their diabetes? I think it's really important for us to keep getting the patient perspective in terms of their day-to-day life, not just the medications that they're taking and the things that we do in healthcare, but they spend 99.9% of their life being people with regular lives, and diabetes management is integrated into that day-to-day. It's not only in the medical encounter. I think it deserves a lot of attention. It's a really interesting area.